Welcome, everybody, to A Little Perspective. My name is Pranav, and this is Nikhil. Today's podcast was highly anticipated. We had the opportunity to have a conversation with James Bogusz, the CEO and President of the Regina Airport Authority.
His grit, passion, and perseverance have led him to the path he's currently on, and he inspires young people to do the same. Our conversation was filled with emotional and heart touching stories. I hope after listening to today's podcast, you all leave with a little perspective.
Welcome, everybody, to A Little Perspective. Today's a very special episode in a very special place. And with no further ado, James Bogusz. How are you today, James?
Doing wonderful. And gentlemen, thanks for getting this all set up today. I know it was a bit of a challenge getting our meeting going, but I'm glad to have you here today.
No, we're so happy that this finally happened. And so just before we begin the podcast, James, a brief overview. So we usually get our guests to just introduce themselves for our viewers or listeners. So how about we all get on the same page and you give a brief introduction about yourself first?
You bet. So my name is James Bogusz, proudly Canadian, 45 years old, married to a wonderful woman, Melanie Bogusz, my wife of almost 27 years. 5 indoor cats, so I'm going to just plug it right now. If you haven't adopted an animal, do consider a cat or a dog for your home, as long as you can take care of it. And I'm proudly the CEO of the 16th busiest airport in Canada. And I've been here in Regina almost 7 years, but I'm born and raised in Victoria, BC. And I worked at the Victoria Airport about 15 years of my career prior to coming here in Regina. So that's my super short story, but very happy to be here today.
So, you've been in the airport industry for almost 20 years, 25 years?
Little over 20 years, yeah.
Little over 20 years. Yeah. How's the experience been?
You know, I think a lot of people don't realize what an airport is or does for a community. You know, we obviously take for granted, and we have awesome city here with enough population to have good air service. But we've got to remember, a lot of communities don't enjoy, flights to Vancouver, flights to Toronto, most recently flights to Minneapolis. And having air service in a community really provides social connection. Now, when I got involved with airports, I was actually a very young man. I used to run a technology business in Victoria, British Columbia. We called it Reboot Consulting. The tagline was easy. Before you called us, reboot your computer, right? You start it up again.
Right.
And often we'd get the phone call, and then we'd go out and help the person fix their computer. But the airport was one of my first customers. And I remember as a young boy seeing the airport in Victoria and how it was developing. And there's the magic of flight. But I got to tell you something. Once I started working for the Airport Authority, which is what I now oversee today here in Regina, I started realizing the social impacts and benefits that an airport brings to a community. I'm sure you've traveled, of course, using YQR. But you spend a few minutes in the arrivals area and you watch family reunite. You have a chance to see that magic reappear. Could be Christmas time, could be just visiting friends and family, or maybe coming to our city to experience a conference or an event. It's magical. And even when I was fixing the Victoria Airport's computers, I got to see that magic firsthand. And it really made me want to be a big part of this industry. And 20 years sounds like a long time. But between being a manager, kind of working through the ranks at the airport in Victoria, and now proudly being the CEO of this airport, I wouldn't change a thing. It's been a great opportunity, and there's still a lot of great things you're going to be doing here for this airport and this community.
That's awesome. I've seen, I saw this reel on, I think, Instagram one time, and it had a few lines before that too, but about the airport that you said. It says that the airports have seen more real tears than any relationship or movies I've ever seen.
Probably the truth. I can tell you, we've shed a few tears ourselves at the airport. These airports, though, are a place of commerce. Right. They're a place of social connection. You got to keep in mind that you've got over 600 people on the local campus. And this is all the businesses that operate here, whether it be Canada Post, Creos Aviation, the airlines themselves, rental cars, concessions. All of them have their own dynamics. All of them work in a single building for a common good. Just think, guys, this airport generates over $800 million to the local economy per year. When you talk about tears being shed, these are often tears of joy. Mm-hmm. These are jobs. I mean, this airport for this community, being the 16th busiest, has made a massive difference to the local GDP. And I know I talk about economy and jobs, but we have to remember there are families behind these jobs. This is the ability to raise a family, have children, make sure that you can connect to where you need to go for your business, or just inviting loved ones back to the community. So yes, it's, I would say, more tears of joy than otherwise, but there are challenges that we face. And certainly the many people, the men and women who work here, I'm proud of all of them, but the people who work for my company, this is the 50 men and women who take care of this airport, they are truly unsung heroes. And gentlemen, we're talking about equipment operators, we're talking about firefighters, electricians, primarily what we call outside workers, who keep this airport safe, whether it be winter, summer, making sure the building's properly maintained. And we really have a pretty small group that does the administration. But all of it together, it's a great team, and I'm proud to be the leader of that team.
So how did the opportunity come to be? Because like you mentioned, like you're from BC, you're from Victoria. So that switch from such a huge city, such a busy city, to Regina. So how did this all like play out for you?
That's a big question. I'm actually going to backtrack a little bit. So I come from a single mother, and I've got a brother, Christopher, in Victoria. Love them both dearly. It was actually very hard to, sort of leave that track initially. I went to Reynolds High School in Victoria. I tried college for a very short time. I'm proud of both of you, by the way, for what you're doing. It didn't work out for me. I got right into the workforce, and my trajectory was just through hard work. So prior to getting into airports, I had a lot of what I'll call entry-level positions, but I was always finding that sales was my forte. So I moved into eventually selling technology at a now defunct major retailer called CompuSmart. We have Best Buy still today. I worked for its predecessor, CompuSmart and Future Shop, just to let you guys know. Through that, though, I really got the technology bug. And through that technology bug, I eventually started my own business called Reboot Consulting, as I mentioned earlier. Through that business, I earned a customer called the Victoria Airport Authority. Now, this is back, you guys are probably too young to remember this, but back when internet was very basic. We're talking dial-up modems. We're talking networks with one computer, maybe two. So this is going way back to the old days. But through that experience, I earned contacts in the airport world. And joining the Airport Authority full-time for me as a manager occurred in 2007. I had an opportunity of selling my business and moving as a full-time employee to work for a very special man, Mr. Richard Burkett. And that was a transition to becoming a dedicated airport person, as opposed to someone spending half of their time as a contractor at the airport. But at the end of the day, airports, the way to get into them, the way to get into the aviation sector is different for everyone. Some come through education, some come through different backgrounds. I took the path of learning as I went and through hard work, and that was my path into getting into the airport.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you talk so lovely about the people that you work with. There's so many people that are keeping this airport up, keeping the GDP of Regina. There's a lot of pressure being a leader of that community. What keeps you going?
It really is the people. And I sometimes hear it's overused. Leaders talk about, people bringing energy, but I am a worker. I came from the bottom. I worked at delivering newspapers, then Wendy's restaurant, Lee's Chicken, Esso gas station, moved into computer sales. When I joined the Airport Authority in Victoria, I started at an entry-level management position because of my experience. I grew with the workers, not above the workers. I consider my employees partners. I consider them to be peers and colleagues who all have a job to do. Think of this as a large piece of infrastructure that has many different roles that require, but I have a very small team. All of them are passionate. All of them care. I show them that love and care, not from the top. I show them this love and care because I've been there. I've often struggled. I understand what it's like to have to earn your way forward, and I've never forgotten. And, a piece of advice I'll give to both of you as you move ahead in your own careers, never forget where you come from. Never forget that you had to earn your way even to be here today. I don't care if it's 10 years down the road or 20 years down the road, remember where you come from. Because if you do, people will respect the fact that you're giving them respect, just like you would expect today from your employer. And the only other thing I want to add, my staff is exemplary. We have to fight tooth and nail for air service for this community. We love doing it. But remember, we're not Toronto Pearson. We're not Vancouver. The airlines don't just show up and say, we'd like to fly to your community. I have a very small group of firefighters and a small group of equipment operators who punch well above their weight. My administrative staff, and you've met some of them even in setting this podcast up, have to do the job of 2 and 3 people in some cases because we simply couldn't afford large groups of staff to do what larger airports do. And we do it successfully, we do it with pride, and we love this community. And that comes from me because I understand, but each and every one of my team members pulls their weight, and they all demonstrate a love and passion for this airport that I'm very proud of. It gives me a ton of energy and pride to be the leader of this airport.
So I got one question for you, and it's like, if there was a word floating above your head, that would be like hard work and discipline. So what does that actually mean, like, for you personally? Because everybody has their own definition of this is what hard work means to me, or this is what discipline means to me. What does that mean to you that you're standing here in this position in front of us?
I don't actually look at my position as something, my title as something that really gravitates for me. Mm-hmm. What I see this is a reflection actually of my grandfather. My mother, by the way, single mother, raised my brother and I, amazing woman. My grandfather, God rest his soul, taught me some lessons in life that were something I'll never forget. They immigrated from Portugal. I'm half Portuguese. When my grandfather came, it was to do with the government at the time, essentially communism and socialism that was occurring in that country. And he had to go from essentially being the administrator of a hospital to starting a new life in Winnipeg with my very young mother and, of course, her siblings. And he had to work at a factory making clothing. And he used to call the clothing skins, by the way, just a little detail. But he remembers, he spoke English, but just, Portuguese version of English, I'll call it. Mm-hmm. But he remembered going from an executive, basically, position in a country that he had to flee to starting at the bottom. I don't want to overstate my situation in Victoria. I had a wonderful upbringing, but we didn't have much money, and that's fine. When I think about dedication and work ethic, I do it because it's a value that I believe all leaders should hold. In my view, leaders need to lead by example. Hard work is not just long hours or a certain mandate. For me, hard work is showing that you care about what you do and you can explain and share that with others. And the older I've gotten, the more satisfaction I've been taking from not what I'm doing, but what I can help other people do. Giving people an opportunity, like my philosophy at the airport. Where possible, I try to promote from within. It's not always possible, but I make a real point to help my own team learn and grow because that's how I was given the opportunities to be where I'm at today. If someone didn't say, hey, instead of being just the computer guy, how about trying operations? How about trying this? If I didn't get given that opportunity, I wouldn't be sitting in front of you here in Regina. So I now pay that forward and I seek a lot of satisfaction. And my hard work, I want to pass that on to others in stories, sharing, and making sure that they're given opportunities to grow themselves, just like I was. And that's very important to me today. And that's how I kind of look at hard work and why I'm here in front of you today.
There's this person, Simon Sinek, that we follow, and he gives great examples of what great leadership is like. He has this line that when you're in a leadership position, you're not responsible for the customers. You're responsible for the people who are responsible for the customers.
Absolutely.
If you take care of the people, they'll take care of the customers. They'll do the work. Just give more. So, and he asked this question to everybody that if you really want to know somebody, ask them their why. So I'll ask you this. What's your why in life? Why do you get out of bed?
Wow. I probably haven't put any thought into that. I can tell you some days it feels like the why in life is to make sure my cats have a better life. No, I'm kidding. Remember, 5 indoor cats. Truly, my why in life is because I want to push forward. And we have no children by choice. My wife and I decided not to have kids. So we love children, just not for us. So it's not a legacy for me. I decided quite early on in life, I don't want to get into it on the podcast, but like many of us, I had a little trouble in my young days, and I turned around a good leaf when I met my beautiful wife, Melanie, and we started dating. It took me 8 years to finally get engaged to her, by the way. It took me a long time, married to her. I got engaged in a few years. But I had to really take stock of where I was going with my life. And my grandfather, when he was around, used to always say, you always have to look forward. You always have to keep going. Keep going, he would tell me. And when I did make that change, personal change, to decide to really focus on, it wasn't about money, it was more about moving forward positively in my life. That's never changed. That was for me at 17. I'm 45 today. A few pivotal events occurred in my young life where I decided that it was time to get on a different road. I made a commitment to myself, and when I commit to myself and I make a promise to somebody, or I shake their hand and look them in the eye, including looking myself in the eye, I'm always going to do that. And I promised myself it was time to turn a leaf and make a better life. And God bless her, my wife there, or my girlfriend at the time, supporting me, becoming eventually my wife. That's the time I decided it was time to move forward. Beyond my grandfather's voice in my head still today, and beyond the love I have for others, I draw strength from sharing my abilities, my thoughts, my passion with others, because I now gain passion from that. So it's certainly evolved. I have enough. I now want to make sure others around me have enough. And this is a big change for me as I'm getting older, and I see the power and value in helping others get ahead, not just selfishly for myself or my own family.
I'm sorry if this is like a personal question, but what's your most cherished memory of your grandfather?
Wow, I've got many. Two very briefly. I used to go to Winnipeg when I was a young boy, and it would be summers. Thank God, I've learned. It's so cold. My mom would vacation, and I got a chance to meet the cousins, as we used to call it. My grandfather took the time to take me to places around Winnipeg, and he would talk to me. I would have been under 10 years old, by the way, so this is a long time ago, but the memories I have were him showing me the Mint, their big place they make the money in Canada for the first time, but also going to a place called Pick-a-Pop. I don't expect any of you to know what the heck that is, or those watching the podcast. But it was a place you would go and you'd basically buy different types of pop, essentially, and not Coca-Cola, like their brand of pop. Okay. And he would share with me stories about Portugal. He would talk about the family. He would just share stories with me. And when I was a young boy, I used to just love spending time with him. My grandfather was a very busy man in his older life. He actually worked into his 70s. He was the vice consulate of Portugal, which basically means the guy who does your passports. That's basically what it means. Okay. And he worked in the Winnipeg office. So as a young boy, that was my memory, is just being a loving grandfather. But as I became a teenager, and after those pivotal set of events that occurred for me when I was 17, he just re-embraced me. He didn't judge me. Wow. Sorry, guys. He just told me to move on and to embrace life. And I did. I had no idea I get emotional, but you asked me something that's really near to my heart. And I remember being in his condo in Victoria, where they retired, and him loving my girlfriend at the time, Melanie, again, my wife today, right, and just allowing me to be re-embraced and to go forward in my business life. He always supported me. The jobs I had, my motivation. He always told me, he didn't overstate it, but he always told me to help others. And he called it, by the way, the population. That's just what he called it, as opposed to the people. Remember, he was Portuguese talking. Yeah. But he said, James, you got to help the population, he said to me. Always said this to me. And I always remember that. And as I built my business, even though I had very little money, we started with a $100 pager. I couldn't afford benefits initially, but when I could, I did for my staff. We went from like me and my partner, and we started adding actual full-time employees. I never forgot that. I shared profit with my company. I never forgot how important it was to share with others and not just selfishly keep it all for yourself. And I just thank my grandfather so much for instilling those values, and him being there at a very pivotal time in my young life. I got to tell you guys, everybody's got some moments in life that are very defining. And when I had my challenges, he was there, and he was there to help motivate me to bounce back when I needed it the most. So I would say those are two big memories: the condo in Victoria and some talks we had, and a young boy going to pick a pop in the Mint in Winnipeg. Those would be the big two.
People talk about success, and people see that, this guy has so much money, this guy has this guy is that's successful. I think your grandfather is the most successful guy.
Yeah.
Like, he touched your life, he changed your life, and you talk about him so passionately. May his soul rest in peace.
Thank you.
But, good people never die.
Thank you. I still feel him today, for sure. I absolutely do. And I want to give a shout out also. I don't know if she'll ever watch this, but my mom was very pivotal for me too. I mean, single mother, raising two boys. Even though we didn't have money, I never felt poor. I'm going to tell you that right now. Never felt poor. What a woman. She's in Victoria with my brother Chris still, of course, and we go and visit. I'm going to see them in October coming up. Don't know if this is going to air, but
That's awesome.
I'm going to see them coming up this year, and we try to visit at least once a year. Yeah, I'm very, very blessed with great people who in themselves had a lot of strength. My mom, my grandfather, it makes a big difference. It really does. And yeah, I will always be appreciative, and I'll always be humble about my upbringing, for sure.
And like I relate to that too. Like I grew up in like a single mom family as well. Yeah. And it's not easy, man. Like filling two shoes, and very important two shoes, and also managing like your entire family, giving time to your son. It's hard.
Yeah.
So I completely understand where you're coming from, and I just like love it so much when people have that respect, because not a lot of people do. Yeah. There are a lot of people that just take it for granted, and then just keep remembering the days and wish that they could come back. But I love seeing it, especially people like you, that you cherish those memories even in the present. So I want to ask you this one thing, that, and you're spreading your grandpa's message, through Regina Airport Authority. How do you do it outside of work? Because we want to get to know how James does it, not James, CEO of XYZ. How does James spread the message when he steps out of these doors?
Sure. I'm the same person here in front of you as I am with my team, as I am with my wife on the weekend. I'm not any different. I don't go out of my way to look for things to solve for people. What I do is I offer advice, mentorship. I see opportunities sometimes just to give a little pep talk, for example, to friends. I don't preach. I want to be clear about that. I want everyone to live their own life, live their own way, follow their own path. But I've had great opportunities even locally here. We've got some good friends who run a business, and I, certainly, without being too pushy, try to provide some advice and support off the side. My wife and I ran a very successful business. That was the computer company, which I didn't mention, but she did work at for 5 years. Oh, I also try to, do a little extra. For example, a good friend of mine also is into, cat rescue, for example. And as much as it's not just cats for me, although I do love cats, as you can probably tell. I probably went out 4 times. I'll go help out with things, on a weekend, for example, maybe a yard sale, or maybe we're doing some fundraising. I'll go and do those things and be that sales guy from Future Shop that I used to be, to go make you buy more than just $1, item, maybe make it $3 of items and negotiate with you. But for me, I just want to be present in people's lives when they need a little extra help, when they need a little perspective. I'm stealing your line here, by the way, guys.
Take it all the way.
I'm telling you, sometimes people just need a chance to feel like you're not being judgmental, you're listening, but you're sharing some experiences, but you're also listening to what's important to them. It's one thing to have my own story, but we all have our own story. We all have a path. And I find today, and this is not a criticism of younger people. In fact, I'm very impressed with both of you even doing what you're doing. But I find today, because there's such a difference in how people are being brought up. I mean, I don't come from a social media world. In fact, I don't even really like it that much, to be honest. I use it because I have to for work. I come from a time when, you're playing as a young kid outside and there's no computers really until my teens. And even then the internet was so bad, you were doing more stuff with friends. So social connection was very important. And what I'm finding with people who are often in their 20s or 30s, because of the way they were being brought up, they didn't have as much exposure. So I kind of bring that back in. I try to bring some grounding back in. I've got a few people in my life that I don't want to call myself a mentor. I simply would say I'm there for advice and I'm there for support. And these are people who they don't necessarily do things directly for me, but I consider them to be people I'm expecting big things from. Just like my grandpa thought about me. I'm expecting them to be supporting their communities and supporting their families. And when I find someone who's a good person, I like to give them a little bit more of my extra time. It's not about just at work hours. We're talking about when they need some support. At the end of the day, community is important, but what community means is different for everybody. Some people are very family focused. Some are very focused of their actual community, like the city of Regina. Some love volunteering. Some love their church. It means something different. But people have to have the skills and tools and emotional capability to give themselves the credibility to make sure that they themselves can give to their version of community. And often we're our worst critics and our worst enemies. And I've walked some roads that I had to learn from. And those experiences I do share privately with some of those people that I do, again, mentor or give advice to when they want it without being pushy about it. I've learned in life, you don't force people down a road, but if they need some support and you're there for them, quite often it can be received very well.
Totally. I mean, you can't really and exactly what you said, you can't help somebody who's not willing to be helped. No matter how much you try.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel like it gets pretty draining as well, that you see that potential in those people, but if they're not willing to see it in themselves, you just can't help it sometimes. Sometimes you just have to let it go. It might be hard. Those are also hard decisions, but have to make them too, no?
It's very true. And, the other thing I find is some people don't believe in themselves when I can see something in them. And those are the people I try my best to give a little extra time to. People I may see potential in, especially in my workplace environment. Some people don't view themselves as up-and-comers. Not everyone's going to be a CEO. Not everyone's necessarily going to be a vice president of whatever by title. But even just creating confidence in people, genuine confidence, but they themselves become more confident because you expose them to opportunities, expose them to challenges, test their mettle. You all know, of course, that to be strong, you have to also work. I can tell you lift weights, for example. So to get your muscles bigger, you got to push. You temper a sword. You have to hit the sword with a hammer. To get people to be confident, you have to give them the hard jobs, not just the easy stuff. A lot of people don't realize that. Adversity and challenge is a good thing. Not to the point of breaking, but actually, in some cases, to the point of breaking is necessary. And I'm finding more and more that the people who really deserve the time are the up-and-comers, and often ones who themselves need a confidence boost. Not so much from the outside, but showing them a pathway to get over the things that are holding them back from gaining that confidence. And I've got a number of people in my own company, but in my personal life as well, at various degrees, who I just believe need a little more confidence, and they can earn that themselves when they have those opportunities provided to them. And that's where I feel I've been able to help out a little bit for sure. And that's very satisfying for me, because for me, learning through adversity has been a big part of my life, and learning through challenge is what's made me a stronger person today. And that's why I became a CEO at 39 for an airport of our size, not because of an education, because of hard work, grit, and the ability to not give up and to make sure I see things through and do what I say and say what I do and make sure I'm a man of my word. And I think all of those things have helped. And I think these are lessons that young people today need to hear, they need to consider in their own way, right, without it being too preachy and something that won't land with people. So opportunities for growth for everybody. I have a lot of room to grow, and I will continue to. 45, 55, doesn't matter. And if you're not open to that, I think that's when it shuts down, for sure.
The complacency.
Yeah, and also just the inability to recognize that we all are going to grow. I'll be a very different person in 5 years than I am in 10 years, but the willingness to offer that growth to yourself and to be okay. I mean, be okay with making mistakes too. I make mistakes all the time. I'm the first to tell. But the difference is I don't have an ego about that. I accept that, and we want to learn from these things. It's always easy to blame someone else. Hardest thing to do sometimes is look in the mirror and say, what can I do differently to make a change? Or how can I help someone differently in the way I'm communicating or I'm doing something, not just what someone else is doing. And that's something that I've learned. The older I'm getting, the better I am at that. And that takes time. It didn't happen at 17, I can tell you that.
Yeah. So there's this philosophy that we both follow. It's called Stoicism. And there's this guy who preaches it a lot. His name is Ryan Holiday. And he has this amazing saying that everything that happens to you is not your fault, but it is your responsibility. And he says that all your success, everything that you're looking for in life is behind your ego. If you just let go of that ego, you can achieve everything.
Wow.
And I'd like to add onto what Nikhil said as well, and what you said about some people that don't realize it, their own true potential. And I might be rephrasing it a bit, but it's your mind that's actually holding you back. Like what he says, I think Seneca says this. He's a famous Stoic, that we suffer more in imagination than in reality.
Yeah.
What goes on in your mind, and it's true. I've actually understood this through my own challenges as well. I think, damn, dude, it's the end of the world. I'm actually screwed now. What am I gonna do?
Yeah.
And now that I'm looking back at 4 years, what I was in 2020, I'm it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
All you have to do is be willing to understand that what's happening right now. Just feel it, understand it, but don't hold on to it.
Yeah.
Because your imagination can totally either help you grow or completely make you hit rock bottom.
Guys, I don't know anybody yet who overcomes this basic pit where we all overthink things, or we can run scenarios in our mind about what ifs.
Right.
I can think of times where I have a challenging situation I have to deal with. Maybe it's an employee matter, maybe it's a business circumstance, maybe it's a personal circumstance. It's coming up on a Monday and it's only Thursday the week before, and you lose sleep over it over a weekend, and you think, and then you get into the circumstance and it's just didn't go the way you thought. You maybe thought 17 scenarios and something in between occurred. It's very difficult. I think it's very human of us, and I don't want to quote who I heard this from, other than I have heard the term the halo effect. Are you gentlemen familiar with this?
No, if you could expand more on that.
So I have heard, and I'm going to probably not do whomever came up with this the service that it deserves. But effectively what it means is we focus so much on things that are within our halo, within our own minds, within our own lives, that we often forget others don't. Mm-hmm. So if you embarrass yourself greatly, you may think about it for 2 months and fret about it. Be anxious about it. Maybe you have a bad public speaking moment. Maybe I say something incorrect on the media or whatever. It doesn't matter what it is, but you may overthink it. Mm. Others have forgotten. They've moved on. They've got their kids or their whatever on the weekend. They're not thinking about what you may have done or you may have done on that Saturday, but we continue to think about it. And what I would just say, and I have not mastered this, I probably won't ever, but I have reduced the burden of that problem by recognizing that we have this halo effect. We have this issue that is regular and human. Some people use the phrases like anxiety. I mean, we all have anxiety. I do a lot of public speaking, but I still get a little bit nervous every time I go up on stage.
I doubt that.
And I promise you, guys, I promise you, it's normal. I think actually people who don't get nervous, I think something's wrong with them.
Psychotic.
Basically, I've actually used that exact word. I mean, I'm a regular person, guys. I've got an Xbox, I got cats and a wife. I'm a normal guy. But my point I'm making is it's us who thinks that way. The audience doesn't want you to fail. The audience isn't feeling the way you may be feeling. But I guess what I'm saying is if there's a life lesson around, especially feeling anxious, because that's something that I think many people I know have, different degrees of anxiety. But when it comes to how we can view things and some of these thoughts, is just recognize that it's okay and it's normal, and recognize why you're feeling this way. And I use that term halo effect because we can all picture a halo shining on your own issues. Totally. But if you realize that that's what's happening, and you realize that everybody has a halo of their own lives, they actually don't care as much about your halo as you think they do. And that for me has been very relieving. So it means that if you do make that error or you do start thinking about things too much, the others who are impacted, there's that fly, are not.
Right.
And the more you can recognize that this is the truth, I've lived it. We all have. Your 4-year example is perfect. It's perfect. The easier it becomes to manage the stresses that inevitably come from leadership, from a job, from family matters, because you recognize that it's normal and you can sort of control those emotions a little better. Not perfectly, but better than just having it unfettered to where you could become a big box of stress or a big box of anxiety, as an example. At least that's my personal opinion.
Right. You know, we spoke about leadership and how to like overcome life's challenges. I kind of want to take it into like a different tangent and want to ask you one question. And I feel like people my age and like a bit younger than me, older than me, would love to know about this. How did you know your wife was the one? Because like you speak so highly of her. And 27 years, and that's amazing. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
Coming up soon in December.
Yeah, December
you
coming
said.
up. Yeah, it'd be 27 years together in December.
Right.
I count the together as the most important thing. But
Right.
yes, yeah.
But I want to know about that aspect of your life too, like, because there are moments you're like, it clicks.
Well, if anybody believes that a relationship is going to be all peaches and cream, they've never been in a relationship before. So it takes some effort and takes some work. I was blessed to have Melanie come into my life at a time where I had some life challenges, but that's not why. I found someone who could be my best friend. And I found somebody who, before I had any sort of business success and before I started having jobs that some may aspire to have, and I'm not suggesting everyone wants to be a CEO or run a business. Everyone's got their own path. And by the way, one's not better than another. I want to be clear about that. It's not about just money or title and stuff. And I'm a not-for-profit CEO, so the money's okay, but don't, I'm not Elon Musk
Whatever
here.
fills your cup, right?
Whatever fills your cup is my point.
Right.
But I found her early in life before I went through this. I was having some hard times back then. And I met someone who got to know me for who I was, not what I could do in the business world. And as our relationship progressed, I really found that it was someone I could talk to and I could have a real connection with very early. And I was very lucky to have this. Wonderful with my family, how she treated my grandfather. Funny enough, she embraced him almost like her own grandfather. Somebody who I could feel respect for in how she handled her own affairs. Hard worker. She used to work for the co-op grocery stores when she was young as one of her jobs. She worked many others, PricewaterhouseCoopers, but we were fellow grinders. We both understood the value of hard work. We both came from nothing. We both came from she had not a single mother the whole time, but due to marriages and what have you, often no father in her life. We shared that. And I found a woman who, on top of being, in my opinion, the most gorgeous woman in the world, I found the most beautiful woman with the most amazing insides, who had a hard work ethic, loved her family, loved animals, and loved me. And this is before I had any quote unquote measured success. And I'll tell you today, other than she's a little older, I think more beautiful. She's grown with me. And the one piece of advice I'll give you two young guys and anybody who wants to have a serious relationship, you'll have tough times, but you don't give up, and you got to grow together and have common goals together. I've learned how to compromise, not give up myself. I'm still me, and she loves me for who I am. But you got to learn how to compromise. Sometimes you have to pick and choose when it's time to say, you know what? Let's work on this together, not just always independently. And also finding, for me, somebody that had my back, and I trust with everything. And for me, this is something that till death do us part. There's nothing that would ever break up myself and my wife, Melanie. Nothing in this world other than death. And even then, we jokingly say we're going to be in heaven together petting the cats.
There we go. That's awesome.
What are your cats' names?
Oh, do you want the nicknames or the real names? Actually, just before I get into that, because it's going to take me a sec, we just Locally, big shout out to Excalibur Cat Cafe locally in town. Just want to make sure I say that. For Chelsea, the owner, is absolutely fantastic. So 4 of our cats now came from Excalibur. The 5th one that came from BC, believe it or not, it's actually from Saskatchewan. Her name is Lily, and she actually came from Prince Albert. And then I guess they truck out animals. Sometimes there's too many in one province. The rescues do this. And we actually adopted her in Victoria, ironically. And here we are in Saskatchewan, so she's back. Full circle. But Edward, Atticus, Acorn, and lovely Francis are the 4 we've gotten from the cafe over time. We've been cat owners almost our entire time that we've been together. So this is not our first generation cats. Okay. No criticism for those who like to get cats from the breeders and what have you. I'm not as long as someone owns an animal, I think it's great. But we've gone kind of down the road of the ones that are a little bit rougher, need a nice home. And because we are without children, let's just say they're very spoiled. I'll just say that. So yeah, no, we do love the cats, and we definitely we donate quite steadily to some of the cat charities in town, and we like animals generally. My wife's even a vegetarian. I tried vegan for a couple of years, and I moved to Saskatchewan. No way. I gotta have the steaks and the chicken. But my wife's a full-time vegetarian for many years. Her passion for animals is impressive. So yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I do wish both of you good success on whatever you decide for relationships as you carry on, or if you're in one today. Right. Guys, it is something that is very special, and having someone who, when I say has your back, who you have that level of solidarity with, it's more than any job, it's more than anything. If you can find that in your life, it's incredible. It really is.
100%.
All right, we won't take much of your time. And just one last thing, towards the end of the podcast, we just do this quick rapid fire round.
Sure.
I'm going to ask you 3 little questions. Pram's going to ask you 3 questions. You have to answer in 1 word or 1 sentence.
Wow. Okay.
Pretty short.
This is the time I'll have the halo effect when I give you an answer that will be on video forever. Okay. So let's do it. All right.
Start us off.
Perfect. So if you could have a conversation with your 20-year-old self, what would you tell him?
Truthfully, it would be marry Melanie sooner. I mean that. Yeah.
Awesome.
What's your favorite restaurant in Regina?
Let's not piss off a lot of people.
Memories.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So what are you most grateful for in your life?
My upbringing.
If there's one person you could talk to, dead or alive, future, in the past or whenever, who would that one person be?
One more conversation with my grandfather. Just one more.
You want to go? I'm going to think of another one.
What's the worst piece of advice you've ever heard?
That young people should change their jobs every 2 years. You guys get this weird advice on LinkedIn and stuff. You're supposed to. I'm serious.
Yeah.
You got to grind. I'm going to make a quick plug here. I had a job in Victoria Airport as a manager for 10 years. I ran a business for 6. Even my entry-level positions, I would grind. You got to show some certainty. I have 7 years almost as CEO. I'm not, unless the board doesn't see fit to keep me, I'm not planning on going anywhere. People got to put some time in. Nothing wrong with getting promoted within a company. You don't have to sign up forever. But some of this stuff of 6 months, 8 months, I see this advice being given to young people to basically, oh yeah, if you stay in a job too long, that's a bunch of malarkey. Employers want some certainty, not because it's like military service, but my God, you got to learn to have some grit, and you don't get to give up. You don't get to give up when stuff gets tough, and it gets a lot tougher typically in years 2 and 3 than it does when you have the honeymoon phase in a job. I know that's not what you're asking me, but I just want to plug that out there because I see that some bad advice. And when I was a young guy, I remember all the general advice was don't stay in a job too long. That's just nonsense. That's absolute nonsense.
That would just mean you're not committing to something. You just keep switching in.
Exactly.
Things, right.
One wife, I have a few jobs in my life, but one wife, long term, I could eat the same lunch every day. I'm like Steinbrenner from Seinfeld. Look that up if you don't know what I'm talking about. So, but no, with sincerity, just you got to show some grit in life. And I think people genuinely respect people who can show some grit. And we need to have people, family, leaders, whatever, who have some grit. People, I believe, resonate with that quite well.
And for my last question, so what didn't you value before that you currently value more than anything?
It's going to have to be the focus on others as opposed to just building your own self, whether that be career I didn't factor in the great deal of emotional wealth I've gained by supporting others in their journey at a reasonable pace. I've got my own life I have to live too, but certainly I would say that that's been a much bigger focus here in Regina, especially. And this is the first time I've been a CEO. And it's the first time I felt, and I've got a wonderful board who supports what I do and a great community. And generally speaking, I've got a wonderful group of business leaders who I can speak with on a regular basis. But the one thing that's changed for me the most is my focus on seeing others grow in their careers. And it's super satisfying. I've heard about people talk about it. I've just never been in a position before where I can actually influence it and potentially offer a job or whatever. That's been massive for me, and it's something I hold near and dear to my heart, and I hope even at 45 I can continue to contribute that way. I really do.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, James, this has been an amazing episode, and trust me, like, not just us, but our viewers or listeners have learned so much from you. Any closing remarks that you have for our viewers or listeners, for us, just like up and coming, a young generation? Any piece of advice, any final advice?
Doesn't have to be through a podcast like you guys are doing, but I loved your grind when you came and saw even me just to talk about this and book it. Pick up the phone and make a call. There's a famous show on TV, you heard Shark Tank, Dragon's Den. I know it's been said before. You don't need someone else to do it for you. Do it yourself. If you're not sure or certain, try and get a mentor, but pick up the phone and make that call. You want to ask someone out? My Melanie, for example. No, not her, but I'm saying the analogy I'm giving you, go for it. You only live once. Be sensible, but you got to make your own path because no one's going to do it for you. And never forget, you're going to get a lot of no's before you get a yes, and you got to be okay with that. And that's tough for a lot of people. But if you can push through, that grit you will gain, it'll see you through for the rest of your lives, professionally and personally. Don't give up. Keep at it. And I'm telling you guys, even this is the kind of thing you want to be doing. You're on the right track. You got to grind, you got to try, you got to make those phone calls. And you both have been very successful. I've seen who's on your podcast. You've done a great job attracting people to come and be willing to talk to you and share their stories, their perspective.
Well, it's the people like you. Like, people are very responsive in Regina. That's what I love about it. As you said, that your upbringing has been about people. There's not a lot of people who do that, but we're really, really grateful for people like you. And that's what our podcast is about. Excellent. I think that's the perfect way to end this.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, so much, guys.
James.
Appreciate it.
Kind of
Yeah, I'll give you this there. Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks for the time. That's awesome. Have a great day. Thank you.